Good evening. Gordon Brown's claiming a victory tonight in his battle to persuade European leaders to follow Britain's bank bailout. After talks in Paris, 15 Eurozone countries agreed in principle to follow the UK's lead and bail out struggling banks. Yet despite the move, city traders in London are braced for more turmoil tomorrow. There are reports 4 of the biggest banks are about to ask the government for £40 billion. From the Elysee Palace in Paris, our political correspondent Alex Forrest reports.
It's amazing what politicians will do in a crisis. These leaders may not always agree on economic matters, but now Gordon Brown, at the request of the President of France, offers a British solution. The UK may not be a member of the Eurozone, but Mr. Brown seems to be convincing its 15 members that his government's bank bailout could well work for them. They've just agreed this action plan, which seems to be very similar to the British model, even if they hadn't yet agreed on figures.
Today we discussed a plan which is a comprehensive plan that would involve not only more cash in the financial markets, but also the recapitalisation of our banking system, and allied to that, something that I believe is absolutely crucial, to begin again the funding of businesses and mortgages with a guarantee given by governments.
And what a British bank bailout it could be. Tomorrow's being dubbed Super Monday, as reports emerge that the government will effectively nationalise some of the UK's biggest banks, including the Royal Bank of Scotland. But today the Prime Minister was giving nothing away.
Well, I can't comment on the discussions we're having with individual banks, and you would not expect me to do so. And these are discussions with individual banks, not some blanket proposal, other than that money will be made available for shares.
Gordon Brown may be winning support for his rescue package from around the globe, but some believe he must also take responsibility for the mess. Alex Forrest, ITV News, Paris.
In the light of those reports of 4 big banks being bailed out tomorrow, HBOS and Lloyds TSB have both denied that the takeover deal has fallen through. A spokesman for Lloyds TSB tonight said its rescue plan for HBOS is still on track and that both sides are continuing to work on all aspects of the transaction. Previously, secret papers which show the role Tony Blair played in New Labour's first major scandal have come to light. Briefing notes describe how just hours after meeting Formula One boss Bernie Ecclestone, Tony Blair personally intervened to have the sport exempted from a tobacco advertising ban. Raymond Green reports.
Ferrari and McLaren. Racing cars painted like cigarette packets may now be a thing of the past. Today the sponsors are oil and banks and mobile phones, but it's not so long since the sport was fighting to keep the sponsorship of big tobacco. The last European Grand Prix to carry advertising was in 2005, but in Britain the ban might have come into force 8 years earlier if the newly elected Labour government hadn't decided to make a pride exception for the millionaires of motorsport. Documents made public today show what happened after the Health Secretary, Frank Dobson, first declared a ban. But 5 months after that first announcement, Formula One bosses were meeting with Tony Blair to argue their case against it. The next day, Downing Street was instructing ministers to find a way to exempt sport, and in particular, Formula One. Even at the time, it seemed clumsy, and Mr. Blair had to apologise in his first real setback as Prime Minister.
This was one of the potentially great political scandals of modern times. The Labour Party tried hard to sweep it under the carpet. Now we find the truth that actually it was far more questionable than was known at the time.
It's 11 years since the then PM's TV appearance to try to draw a line under the affair. His words well remembered.
I would never do anything either to harm the country or anything proper. I never have. Most people who have dealt with me think I'm a pretty straight sort of guy, and I am.
A spokesman for Mr. Blair points out there's nothing new in today's allegations, and it is true those early days of his premiership now seem even further away than the tobacco-fuelled heyday of Formula One. Raymond Green, ITV News.
In other news, Zimbabwe's power-sharing deal appears in tatters tonight after opposition leader Morgan Tsvangirai threatened to pull out. He says he may step down if new negotiations fail. It follows President Robert Mugabe's decision to allocate 3 major ministries to his own ZANU-PF party. Fiona MacKeown, the mother of the murdered British teenager Scarlett Keeling, has refused to attend a summons in India to answer allegations of child neglect. The 15-year-old was murdered in Goa in February while the rest of the family went travelling. And the golfer, Seve Ballesteros, has been diagnosed with a brain tumour. He's been receiving treatment in a Madrid hospital after collapsing and will undergo further tests on Tuesday. Lewis Hamilton's hopes of winning the Formula One World Championship took a hit at the Japanese Grand Prix. Despite being in pole position, Hamilton made a poor start and ran off the road at the first corner. Then on the second lap, as he tried to regain his place, he spun off after he was hit by rival Felipe Massa. Hamilton finished 12th and is now just 5 points clear with 2 races left. Finally tonight, the Wiltshire town of Wootton Bassett never forgets the servicemen and women who die in Iraq and Afghanistan. In the past 18 months, more than 100 coffins have been brought through the town. Each time, the streets have been lined with people paying their respects. Today, the armed forces said thank you, as Greg Eastill reports.
A flypast to honour the town that honours the fallen. Because in Wootton Bassett in Wiltshire, every lost serviceman or woman brings the place to a standstill. It's a simple tradition that began in April last year when nearby RAF Lynham became the main base for bringing home those killed in a far-off conflict. Since then, thousands here have lined the streets and paid their respects 53 times to corteges carrying a total of 102 military personnel on their final journey.
There, but for the grace of God, go I. Yeah. I could have done that. I could have been one of those lads, but I wasn't, thank God. They've given their all for this country, and it's only a fitting tribute that we should pay our respects to them.
We felt it extra special that we did it, and they were able to stop here, and we just showed them our appreciation.
But this afternoon, the favour was returned with pomp and ceremony, marching bands, and a scroll of thanks presented to the town.
I'd like to think this town sets an example, a broader example, and set a standard for this type of respect that perhaps the rest of the United Kingdom would do well to emulate.
More war dead will almost certainly pass through Wootton Bassett soon, but this town will honour them all. Greg Eastill, ITV News.
And that's it from the weekend team. Good night.
That's your home insurance all sorted. Have a great holiday. Bye. She's off to Barbados. Barbados.
Hello again, a very good evening to you. Rain continues to spread in from the north as we move through the night, whilst to the south it's a dry night for you, but increasingly cloudy. So looking ahead at the detail for a brand new week, we do start the day on a cloudy note for pretty much everyone, with I think a little bit of light and patchy rain under the thickest clouds, mostly out towards the west. Now into the afternoon we could see a little bit of brightness developing out towards the extreme south and east. Certainly the best of any sunshine will be reserved for Northern Ireland and much of Scotland, but even so we could see a few sharp showers towards the far north and northwest of Scotland in the afternoon. And from a temperature point of view, it's certainly cooler than yesterday, but with a high of around 18 Celsius, 64 in Fahrenheit. It's still above where it should be for the time of year. Good night.
ITV National Weather, sponsored by eShore.